Let me start with the truth most people don't want to hear. Your existence hasn't reached its ceiling. Your thinking has. We waste years sitting around for the ideal circumstances, the surge of inspiration or external validation before we trust our own capabilities. But here's the stark reality. Nothing transforms until your thinking transforms. Not your career, not your connections, not your situation. Your mind is the command center of your fate. It determines what you pursue, what you flee from, and what you believe you're worthy of receiving. And if you refuse to push it toward expansion, it will forever select safety over bravery, anxiety over conviction, and rationalizations over action. Listen, achievement isn't about possessing the highest IQ in any given space. It's about conditioning your consciousness to envision possibilities beyond your anxieties and develop strength that surpasses your patterns. The mind absorbs whatever you consistently feed it, uncertainty or self-control, restrictions or potential. This moment is not about temporary enthusiasm. This moment is about a reality check, because the instant you demand your mind to elevate, to conceive grander thoughts, execute with greater power, and anticipate superior outcomes, your entire existence starts to transform. Not gradually but fundamentally. And that's precisely where this expedition starts. Let me begin with something uncomfortable but necessary. Your existence isn't crumbling and it isn't frozen because the universe is unjust or chances are scarce. The genuine cause you experience paralysis is because your consciousness has been cycling through identical patterns for years. And those patterns have silently crystallized into your truth. We frequently search externally for solutions, anticipating a pivotal instant, a message, or someone to extract us from our present circumstances. But the reality is far more intimate than that. Nothing transforms until your thought process transforms. And nothing expands until your consciousness is compelled to expand alongside it. Your mind is engineered to shield you, not to manufacture your success. It favors ease over boldness and the known over development. That's the reason it instructs you to remain stationary even when remaining causes pain. It murmurs that this suffices, that embracing uncertainty is perilous, and that imagining larger will only result in letdown. Across time, those murmurs evolve into convictions. And those convictions silently mold the selections you execute every single day. Before awareness strikes, your patterns, your self-assurance, and even your sense of value start to contract to align with the boundaries of your thinking. The harsh reality is that most individuals aren't existing beneath their capability because they lack aptitude. They're existing there because they never condition their consciousness to anticipate greater. Your mind becomes whatever you repeatedly nourish it with. If you nourish it anxiety, it will maintain your smallness. If you nourish it justifications, it will maintain your immobility. But when you start nourishing it discipline, meaning, and self-regard, it begins to reconstruct itself. It starts seeking answers instead of exit strategies and possibilities instead of obstacles. Compelling your mind to elevate means selecting expansion even when it generates unease. It means presenting yourself on occasions when inspiration is absent. It means executing the labor when nobody is observing and trusting yourself before evidence exists to support it. Development isn't spectacular. It's silent, cyclical, and frequently isolating. Yet, every minor determination you execute to advance beyond your previous boundaries transmits a signal to your consciousness that you possess greater capacity than you previously accepted. When you confront your cognitions, enhance your patterns, and refuse to accept comfortable mediocrity, your consciousness starts to shift. And when your consciousness shifts, your self-assurance intensifies, your behaviors become more assertive, your benchmarks elevate. Abruptly, possibilities you never perceived previously begin to materialize. Not because reality altered, but because you evolved. The existence you desire isn't somewhere distant anticipating discovery. It initiates the instant you determine to cease existing mechanically and compel your mind to develop into a more powerful, more courageous iteration of itself. Most people don't realize that the biggest battles they will ever fight are not with the world, but with their own minds. On the outside, life may look ordinary, even successful, but inside there is a constant struggle between who you are now and who you know you could become. That friction exists for a purpose. It's your capability demanding greater than what you've been accepting. And yet, instead of acknowledging it, we suppress it with justifications, diversions, and ease, permitting days, months, even years to elapse without genuine expansion. Your mind is not your adversary, but it is not your ruler either. It is an instrument, and like any formidable instrument, it must be trained. Abandoned to its own devices, the consciousness will perpetually select what registers as secure. It will recall previous disappointments, amplify anxiety, and persuade you that remaining stationary is the most intelligent option. Across time, this constructs an invisible prison fabricated not of situations, but of convictions. You cease requesting more, cease challenging your boundaries, and gradually accept a diminished iteration of existence than the one you once envisioned. The reality is, expansion initiates the instant you determine to generate discomfort purposefully. It initiates when you interrogate the cognitions that instruct you to abandon, to postpone, or to diminish your anticipations. Compelling your mind to elevate is not about treating yourself harshly. It's about embracing honesty. Honest regarding your patterns, your self-control, and the narratives you cycle through in your consciousness when nobody else is present. Every cognition you select to confront diminishes the grip your previous mindset possesses over you. When you start presenting yourself reliably, even absent inspiration, your consciousness starts to adjust. It absorbs that anxiety is not a prohibition, but an indicator. It absorbs that exertion doesn't demolish you. It fortifies you. Gradually, your internal conversation shifts. Instead of declaring I cannot, it starts to inquire how might I. Instead of evading accountability, you start claiming possession of your selections and their consequences. This transition may register as subtle initially, but it is influential beyond calculation. What genuinely alters an existence is not one audacious determination, but thousands of minor ones executed while nobody is celebrating. Selecting discipline over postponement, boldness over ease, dedication over expediency. Each of these selections transmits a transparent signal to your consciousness. We are elevating. And once your consciousness accepts this fresh benchmark, it raises the threshold for everything else. Your connections improve because you regard yourself more highly. Your aspirations expand because your conviction system broadens. Eventually, you comprehend that the restrictions you once feared were never authentic. They were cognitive barriers constructed by repetition and uncertainty. The more you challenge them, the more fragile they become. Your mind is capable of incredible transformation, but only if you demand more from it. The moment you stop negotiating with fear and start moving forward anyway, you step into a version of yourself that is no longer controlled by comfort, but driven by purpose. You are not weak. You are just under-challenged. Somewhere along the way, you stopped demanding more from yourself and started negotiating with fear. Not because you lacked talent or ability, but because your brain learned that comfort was easier than courage. It learned that playing safe brought less risk, less failure, and less responsibility. And slowly, almost silently, it convinced you that this smaller version of life was all you were meant for. But deep down, you know that is not true because dissatisfaction is the loudest sign that growth is overdue. Your brain is incredibly powerful, but it is also predictable. It responds to repetition, not potential. It believes the thoughts you think most often and builds habits around them. If you keep replaying doubt, your brain will make doubt feel normal. If you keep avoiding hard work, your brain will decide that avoidance is your standard. This is why change feels so difficult at first. You are not just changing actions. You're challenging years of mental conditioning that kept you stuck in the same loops. Forcing your brain to level up requires intentional pressure. Growth never happens in comfort zones because comfort demands nothing from you. The moment you start doing things that feel unfamiliar and hard, your brain resists. It creates excuses, fear scenarios, and reasons to stop. But here's the truth most people never hear. Resistance is proof that evolution has begun. The discomfort you feel is not a warning sign. It is confirmation that you are stretching beyond who you used to be. Every time you do the hard thing instead of the easy one, you rewrite the rules your brain lives by. Showing up when motivation disappears. Keeping promises you made to yourself. Choosing discipline even when no one is watching. These small acts may seem insignificant, but they teach your brain a powerful lesson. You can be trusted. And once your mind learns to trust you, your confidence stops depending on external validation and starts growing from within. At first the progress feels slow. There is no applause, no instant results and no dramatic transformation. But quietly something shifts. Your focus sharpens. Your tolerance for excuses fades. You start responding to challenges instead of running from them. The same problems that once overwhelmed you begin to feel manageable. Not because life got easier, but because your mind grew stronger over time. You begin to notice that your standards change. You no longer accept what drains you. You no longer settle for situations that limit you. Your brain, once wired for survival, starts operating from a place of intention and purpose. You stop asking if you are capable and start deciding what you are willing to work for. That transition alters everything. The individual you aspire to become is not awaiting inspiration, fortune, or endorsement. That iteration of you is constructed through exertion, repetition, and boldness. When you compel your consciousness to elevate, you cease existing mechanically and start engineering your existence deliberately. And once that mechanism initiates, there is no reverting to who you existed as previously, because expansion once experienced becomes non-negotiable. Most people wake up every day on autopilot, repeating the same thoughts, the same routines, and the same doubts without ever questioning where they came from. Over time, this repetition creates a mental cage that feels safe but keeps you small. You begin to believe that this is just how life is, that striving for more is unrealistic, and that ambition should be quiet so you don't risk disappointment. But the reality is, you were not engineered to exist on Xinhuai. You were engineered to flourish. And your unease is evidence that your present mindset is no longer sufficient. Your consciousness's primary function is preservation, not metamorphosis. It craves predictability even if predictability generates unhappiness. That's the reason it drags you backward toward previous patterns when you attempt to shift. It recalls previous disappointments, exaggerates uncertainty, and persuades you that postponing is more prudent than executing. This is not instinct. This is programming. And if you refuse to interrogate it, your consciousness will persist in governing your existence based on anxiety instead of potential. Compelling your consciousness to elevate initiates with recognition. Recognition of the cognitions you permit to occupy your consciousness without contribution. Recognition of the justifications that register as reasonable but exclusively postpone advancement. The instant you start monitoring your internal conversation, you comprehend how frequently you convince yourself away from expansion. You waver, you analyze excessively, and you defer execution. Not because you aren't prepared, but because your consciousness favors security over substance. Expansion requires pressure. Just like muscles, the brain strengthens when it is challenged. When you choose discipline over comfort, you send a powerful message to yourself. I am capable of more. Every uncomfortable action you take expands your mental capacity. Waking up earlier, staying consistent, showing up nervous but prepared. These choices train your brain to operate at a higher standard. Gradually, resistance converts into resilience. Initially, there is turbulence. Previous patterns retaliate. Uncertainty becomes more audible before it becomes more feeble. But if you maintain consistency through this phase, something remarkable happens. Your brain adapts. It stops panicking at uncertainty. It learns that discomfort does not equal danger. And as that fear softens, your confidence grows. Not the loud performative kind, but the quiet confidence that comes from self-trust. When you level up your thinking, your tolerance for mediocrity disappears. You stop negotiating with bad habits and stop accepting excuses from yourself. You begin making decisions based on where you want to go, not where you have been. Life starts to feel intentional instead of accidental. You are no longer reacting. You are choosing. Eventually, you understand that the limits you once believed in were never real. They were habits of thought reinforced over time. By pushing past them daily, you break the cycle. Forcing your brain to level up is not about perfection or constant hustle. It is about consistent growth. And once you commit to that, your life begins to expand in ways you once thought were impossible. At some point in life, you realize that waiting has cost you more than failure ever could. Waiting to feel ready, waiting for confidence, waiting for clarity, waiting for the perfect time. All that waiting slowly trains your brain to associate progress with permission instead of action. And without noticing, you start living a life on pause. While your potential keeps calling you forward, the frustration you feel isn't random. It's the part of you that knows you were meant for growth, not stagnation. Your brain is incredibly adaptive, but it adapts to whatever you consistently choose. If you choose comfort, it learns comfort. If you choose fear, it learns avoidance. Over time, these choices harden into identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries, takes risks, or pushes limits. Instead, you become someone who plans, delays, and overthinks. Not because you lack ability, but because your brain has been conditioned to protect you from discomfort, rather than guide you toward fulfillment. Forcing your brain to level up means interrupting this pattern deliberately. It means executing before self-assurance materializes and advancing forward even when certainty is lacking. Expansion is never pristine or foreseeable. It is uncomfortable, uncertain, and often lonely. But every time you choose action over hesitation, your brain rewrites its understanding of who you are. It learns that fear does not control you, and that your will is stronger than your resistance. The most powerful shifts do not come from dramatic breakthroughs, but from repeated quiet decisions, choosing discipline over excuses, choosing responsibility over blame, choosing effort when it would be easier to quit. These moments feel small, but they compound. With each one, your brain gathers evidence that you can handle more than you think. And that evidence becomes confidence. Not the inflated kind, but the grounded confidence that comes from keeping promises to yourself. As your thinking evolves, your standards rise. You stop tolerating environments that shrink you. You stop entertaining mindsets that drain you. You become more selective with your time, your energy, and the people you allow close to you. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. When your brain begins operating at a higher level, it naturally rejects what no longer fits. Eventually, you realize that your past limitations were never permanent. They were learned behaviors reinforced through repetition. Once you shatter that repetition, everything starts to transition. Your concentration intensifies. Your resilience fortifies. Obstacles that once frightened you transform into chances to demonstrate to yourself how distant you've traveled. Compelling your consciousness to elevate is an act of self-regard. It is the determination to cease existing beneath your capacity and start becoming who you perpetually recognized you could be. The instant you commit to that mechanism, your existence ceases registering like something that occurs to you and starts registering like something you actively engineer. And that is where genuine transformation begins.